Welcome back to Footnotes and Folly, and to the close of Herodotus's first book. I am Pembroke and this is part 6. Two great things remain. First, Babylon, and here Herodotus the traveller is in his glory, measuring walls you will not believe, counting gates of bronze, describing customs both ingenious and, by his own clear discomfort, rather worse than that. And then the last campaign of Cyrus, who having taken nearly the whole known world rides east against the queen of the nomads who warns him, plainly, to be content. He is not. Let us finish the book.
As soon as Cyrus had made all the other parts of the mainland subject to himself, he proceeded to attack the Assyrians. Assyria doubtless has many other great cities, but the most famous and strongest, and the place where the seat of their monarchy had been established after Nineveh was destroyed, was Babylon. It was a city of the kind I shall describe. It lies in a great plain, and its size is such that each side measures 120 furlongs, the whole being square in shape. Thus the circuit of the city amounts in all to 480 furlongs. Such is the size of Babylon, and its magnificence was greater than that of all other cities known to us. First, there runs around it a trench, deep and broad and full of water. Then there is a wall 50 royal cubits thick and 200 cubits high. The royal cubit is 3 fingers longer than the common cubit. I must also tell, in addition to this, for what purpose the earth taken out of the trench was used, and how the wall was made. As they dug the trench, they made the earth carried out of the excavation into bricks. After molding enough bricks, they baked them in kilns. Then afterward, using hot asphalt for mortar and inserting red mats at every 30th course of brickwork, they first built up the edges of the trench, and then the wall itself in the same manner. At the top of the wall, along the edges, they built one-story chambers facing one another, and between the rows of chambers they left space to drive a 4-horse chariot. In the circuit of the wall, there are set 100 gates made entirely of bronze, and the gate posts and lintels likewise. There is another city, 8 days' journey distant from Babylon, whose name is Is. There is a river there of no great size, also named Is, and it sends its stream into the river Euphrates. This river Is throws up with its water lumps of asphalt in great abundance, and from there the asphalt was brought for the wall of Babylon. Babylon then was walled in this way. The city has 2 divisions, for a river named Euphrates cuts it through the middle. This river flows from the land of the Armenians. It is large, deep, and swift, and it flows out into the Erythraean Sea. The wall on each side has its bends carried down to the river, and from this point walls stretch along each bank of the stream in the form of a rampart of baked bricks. The city itself is full of houses 3 and 4 stories high, and the roads by which it is cut run in straight lines, including the cross streets that lead to the river. Opposite each road, gates were set in the rampart that ran along the river, as many gates as there were streets, and these too were of bronze and lead, like the streets, down to the river itself. The wall I have mentioned is, as it were, a cuirass for the town, and another wall runs around inside it, not much weaker for defense than the first, though enclosing a smaller space. In each division of the city there was a building in the middle. In one division the king's palace, very extensive and strongly fortified all around. In the other the temple of Zeus below, with bronze gates. This temple still existed in my time and measures 2 furlongs each way, being square in shape. In the middle of the temple a solid tower is built, measuring a furlong in both length and breadth. On this tower another tower has been erected, and another again upon that, and so on up to 8 towers. An ascent to these has been built on the outside, running around all the towers. When one reaches about the middle of the ascent, one finds a stopping place and seats for rest, on which those who ascend sit down and rest. On the top of the last tower there is a large cell. In the cell a large couch is laid, well covered, and beside it stands a golden table. No image is set up there, and no human being spends the night there except one woman of the natives of the place, whom the god chooses from all the women, as the Chaldeans, the priests of this god, say. These same men also say, though I do not believe them, that the god himself often comes to the cell and rests on the couch. This likewise happens in Egyptian Thebes, according to the report of the Egyptians, for there also a woman sleeps in the temple of Thib and Zeus. Both these women are said to abstain from intercourse with men. The same is said to happen with the prophetess of the god at Patara and Lycia whenever there is one, for there is not always an oracle there, but whenever there is one, she is shut up during the nights in the temple within the cell. Moreover, in the temple at Babylon there is another cell below, in which there is a great image of Zeus sitting, made of gold. Beside it stands a large table of gold, and his footstool and seat are also of gold. As the Chaldeans reported, the weight of the gold from which these things are made is 800 talents. Outside this cell is a golden altar, and there is also another altar of great size, where full-grown animals are sacrificed. On the golden altar it is not lawful to sacrifice anything except young sucklings. On the larger altar, the Chaldeans offer 1,000 talents of frankincense every year when they celebrate the feast in honor of this god. In these precincts there was also still remaining at the time of Cyrus a statue 12 cubits high, of solid gold. I did not see this myself, but I relate what is told by the Chaldeans. Darius son of Histastes formed a design against this statue, but did not venture to take it. Xerxes son of Darius, however, took it and also killed the priest who forbade him to meddle with it. This temple, then, is adorned with such magnificence, and there are also many private votive offerings. Besides many other rulers of Babylon, whom I shall mention in the Assyrian history, and who added improvements to the walls and temples, there were also 2 who were women. Of these, the one who ruled first was named Semiramis, who lived 5 generations before the other. She made earth embankments in the plain, which are a sight worth seeing. Before this, the river used to flood the whole plain like a sea. The queen who lived after her, named Nitocris, was wiser than the one who had reigned before. In the first place, she left behind monuments that I shall describe, and secondly, seeing that the monarchy of the Medes was great and not likely to remain still, and that among other cities even Nineveh had been captured by it, she made provision against it as far as she was able. First, with regard to the river Euphrates, which flows through the middle of the city, whereas before this it flowed straight, she dug channels above the city, and made it so winding that in its course it actually comes 3 times to one of the villages in Assyria. The name of the village to which the Euphrates comes is Ardarica. Even today, those who travel from the Sea of Ars to Babylon, sailing down the Euphrates, arrive 3 times at this same village on 3 separate days. This she did in this way. She also piled up a mound along each bank of the river, worthy of wonder for its size and height. At a great distance above Babylon, she dug a basin for a lake, which she made extend at only a very small distance from the river, excavating it everywhere to such depth that it came to water, and making its extent so great that its circuit measured 420 furlongs. The earth dug from this excavation she used up by piling it in mounds along the river banks. When this had been dug, she brought stones and set them all around it as a facing wall. She did both these things, making the river wind in its course and turning the dug-out place into a swamp, so that the river would run more slowly, its force broken by many bends, and so that voyages to Babylon would be winding, and after the voyages there would follow a long circuit around the pool. She carried out these works in the part where the entrance to the country lay, and where the shortest way from Media came in, so that the Medes might not have dealings with her kingdom and learn her affairs. These defenses she cast around her city from the depth, and she made the following addition dependent on them. The city was in 2 divisions, with the river occupying the space between. In the time of former rulers, whenever anyone wished to cross from one division to the other, he had to cross in a boat, and that, as I imagine, was troublesome. She made provision for this also. While she was digging the basin for the lake, she left this other monument of herself from the same work. She had stones cut of very great length. When the stones were prepared and the place had been dug out, she turned the whole stream of the river aside into the place she had been digging. While this was filling with water, and the ancient bed of the river was meanwhile dried up, she both built up the edges of the river, where it flows through the city, with baked bricks in the same fashion as the wall, and also built up the descents leading from the small gates to the river. About the middle of the city, as I judge, with the stones she had caused to be cut out, she proceeded to build a bridge, binding the stones together with iron and lead. On top she laid squared timbers across, to remain there during the daytime, over which the people of Babylon made the crossing. But at night they used to take away these timbers, so that people would not go back and forth by night and steal from one another. When the dug-out place had been made into a lake full of water by the river, and at the same time the bridge had been completed, she brought the Euphrates back from the lake into its ancient channel. Thus the dug-out place, having become a swamp, was thought to have served a good purpose, and a bridge had been set up for the men of the city. This same queen also contrived a snare of the following kind. Over the city gate through which the greatest number of people passed, she set up a tomb for herself above the very gate. On the tomb she engraved writing that said, "If any of the kings of Babylon who come after me is in need of wealth, let him open my tomb and take as much as he desires, but let him not open it for any other cause, if he is not in need, for that will not be well." This tomb remained undisturbed until the kingdom came to Darius. To Darius it seemed monstrous not to make any use of this gate, and also, when money was lying there, not to take it, since the money itself invited him to do so. The reason he would not use this gate was that the corpse would have been above his head as he drove through. So he opened the tomb and found not money, but the corpse with writing that said, "If you had not been insatiable for wealth and basely covetous, you would not have opened the resting places of the dead." This queen, then, is reported to have been such as I have described. It was the son of this woman, bearing the same name as his father, Labaintos, and ruling over the Assyrians, against whom Cyrus was marching. Now the great king makes his marches not only well furnished from home with provisions for his table and with cattle, but also taking with him water from the river Chospes, which flows by Susa. Of this river alone, and of no other, the king drinks. A very great number of 4-wheeled wagons drawn by mules carry a supply of this boiled water of the Chospes in silver vessels, and go with him wherever he may march at any time. When Cyrus, on his way toward Babylon, arrived at the river Gins, whose springs are in the mountains of the Massagetae, and which flows through the Dardanians and runs into another river, the Tigris, which flows by the city of Opis and runs out into the Erythraean Sea, he tried to cross this river Gins, which is a navigable stream. Then one of his sacred white horses, in high spirit and wantonness, went into the river and tried to cross, but the stream swept it under water and carried it off at once. Cyrus was greatly angered against the river for having acted so insolently, and he threatened to make it so feeble that in the future even women could cross it easily without wetting the knee. After this threat he stopped his march against Babylon, and divided his army into two parts. Having divided it, he stretched lines and marked out straight channels, 180 on each bank of the Gins, directed every way. After placing his army along them, he commanded the men to dig. Since a great multitude was working, the work was indeed completed, but they spent the whole summer season laboring at this place. When Cyrus had taken vengeance on the river Gins by dividing it into 360 channels, and when the next spring was just beginning, he at last continued his advance upon Babylon. The men of Babylon had marched out from their city and were awaiting him. So when he came near the city in his advance, the Babylonians joined battle with him, and after being defeated in the fight they were shut up close within their city. But they had known well even before this that Cyrus was not inclined to remain still, and they saw him lay hands on every nation alike, so they had brought provisions into the city beforehand for very many years. Therefore they took no account of the siege, while Cyrus was at a loss what to do, for much time went by and his affairs made no progress. Therefore, whether someone else suggested it to him when he was at a loss, or whether he perceived for himself what he ought to do, Cyrus acted as follows. He posted the main body of his army at the place where the river runs into the city, and then again he placed others behind the city where the river issues from it. He proclaimed to his army that as soon as they saw the stream had become passable, they should enter the city by this way. Having placed them in their positions, and exhorted them in this way, he himself marched away with the part of his army that was not fit for fighting. When he came to the lake, Cyrus did the same things regarding the river and the lake that the queen of the Babylonians had done. He conducted the river by a channel into the lake, which at that time was a swamp, and so, by the sinking of the stream, made the former course of the river passable. When this had been done in this way, the Persians who had been posted for this very purpose entered Babylon by the bed of the river Euphrates, the stream having sunk so far that it reached about the middle of a man's thigh. If the Babylonians had known of it beforehand or had perceived what Cyrus was doing, they would have allowed the Persians to enter the city, and then destroyed them miserably. For if they had closed all the gates leading to the river, and mounted the ramparts that ran along the banks of the stream, they would have caught them as if in a fish trap. But as it was, the Persians came upon them unexpectedly. Owing to the size of the city, as those who lived there say, after the people at the edges of the city had been captured, those Babylonians who lived in the middle did not know they had been captured. Since they happened to be holding a festival, they continued dancing and rejoicing during this time, until they learned the truth only too well. Babylon, then, was taken for the first time in this way. As to how great the resources of the Babylonians are, I shall show by many other proofs, and also by this. For the support of the great king and his army, apart from the regular tribute, the whole land over which he rules has been divided into portions. Since 12 months make up the year, for 4 of these he has his support from the territory of Babylon, and for the remaining 8 months from the whole of the rest of Asia. Thus the Assyrian land, in respect to resources, is the third part of all Asia. The government, or satrapy as the Persians call it, of this territory is by far the best of all the governments. When Tritontage son of Artabazos held this province from the king, there came into him every day an artab full of silver coin. The artab is a Persian measure, and holds 3 Attic choinics more than the Attic medimnos. As his private property in this province, apart from horses used in war, he had 800 stallions and 16,000 mares, for each of these stallions served 20 mares. Moreover, such a vast number of Indian hounds were kept that 4 large villages in the plain, free from other contributions, had been appointed to provide food for the hounds. Such was the wealth that belonged to the ruler of Babylon. The land of the Assyrians has very little rain. This small amount nourishes the root of the grain, but the crop is ripened, and the ear comes on with the help of watering from the river. It is not as in Egypt, where the river itself comes up over the fields. Rather, the crop is watered by hand or with swing buckets. The whole Babylonian territory, like the Egyptian, is cut up by channels. The largest of the channels is navigable for ships and runs toward the winter sunrise from the Euphrates to another river, the Tigris, along whose bank lay the city of Nineveh. This territory is by far the best of all we know for producing grain. As for trees, it does not even try to bear them, neither fig nor vine nor olive. But for producing grain it is so good that on average it returns as much as 200-fold, and when it bears at its best, it produces 300-fold. The leaves of the wheat and barley there grow fully 4 fingers broad. For millet and sesame seed how large a tree grows, I know myself, but shall not record, being well aware that even what has already been said about the crops produced is enough to cause disbelief among those who have not visited the Babylonian land. They use no olive oil, but only oil made from sesame seed. Date, palms grow throughout the plain, most of them fruit-bearing, and from these they make solid food, wine and honey. They tend these palms in the same manner as fig trees, and in particular they take the fruit of the palms that the Hellenes call palms and tie them onto the date-bearing palms, so that the gall, fly may enter the date and ripen it, and so that the fruit of the palm may not fall off. The male palm produces gall flies in its fruit just as the wild fig does. The greatest marvel of all the things in the land after the city itself, in my opinion, is what I am about to describe. Their boats, the ones that go down the river to Babylon, are round and entirely of leather. They make ribs for them from willow, which they cut in the land of the Armenians who live above the Assyrians, and around these they stretch hides, which serve outside as a covering by way of hull. They do not make a broad stern or bring the prow to a point, but make the boats round like a shield. After that they stow the whole boat with straw and allow it to be carried down the stream full of cargo. For the most part, these boats bring down palmwood casks filled with wine. The boat is kept straight by 2 steering oars and 2 men standing upright. The man inside pulls his oar, while the man outside pushes. These vessels are made both very large and smaller, the largest of them carrying a burden as great as 5,000 talents weight. In each one there is a live ass, and in the larger one several. When they have arrived at Babylon in their voyage and disposed of their cargo, they sell by auction the ribs of the boat and all the straw. Then they pack the hides on their asses, and drive them back to Armenia. It is not possible by any means to sail up the river because of the swiftness of the current, and for this reason they make their boats, not of timber but of hides. When they have returned to the land of the Armenians, driving their asses with them, they make other boats in the same manner. Such are their boats. The following is the manner of dress they use: a linen tunic reaching to the feet, over this another of wool, and then a white mantle thrown around them. They have shoes of a native fashion, rather like Boeotian slippers. They wear their hair long and bind their heads round with full lace, and they are anointed over the whole body with perfumes. Each man has a seal and a staff carved by hand. On each staff is carved either an apple, a rose, a lily, an eagle, or some other device, for it is not their custom to have a staff without a device on it. Such is the equipment of their bodies. The customs established among them are as follows. The wisest in our opinion is this, which I am informed the Anatoi and Illyria also have. In every village once each year they did the following. When the maidens grew to marriageable age, they gathered them all together and brought them in a body to one place, and a company of men stood around them. The crier caused each one to stand up separately and proceeded to sell them, beginning with the most beautiful of all. After she had been sold, and had fetched a large sum of money, he would put up another, the most beautiful after her. They were sold for marriage. All the wealthy Babylonians who were ready to marry vied with one another in bidding for the most beautiful maidens. Those of the common sort who were ready to marry did not require a fine appearance, but would accept money together with less beautiful maidens. When the crier had finished selling the most beautiful of the maidens, he would cause the least shapely one, or any one of them who might be crippled in some way, to stand up, and he would make proclamation of her, asking who was willing to take her in marriage for the least amount of gold, until she was assigned to the man willing to accept the least. The gold came from the sale of the beautiful maidens, and so those of beautiful form provided dowries for those who were unshapely or crippled. It was not permitted for a man to give his own daughter in marriage to whomever he wished, nor to carry off a maiden after buying her without a surety. Before taking her away, the man had to provide sureties that he would marry her. If they did not agree well together, the law laid down that he should pay back the money. It was also permitted for anyone who wished to come from another village and buy. This was their most honorable custom. It does not still exist at the present time, but lately they have discovered another way, so that men may not mistreat the women or carry them to another city. Since the time when, after being conquered, they were oppressed and ruined, every one of the common people, when in want of a livelihood, prostitutes his female children. Next in wisdom to that is another custom established among them. They carry the sick out into the marketplace, for they make no use of physicians. People come up to the sick man and give advice about his disease, if any one of them has himself ever suffered anything like what the sick man has, or has seen anyone else who suffered it. Coming near, they advise and recommend the means by which they themselves recovered from a similar disease, or saw someone else recover from it. It is not permitted to pass by the sick man in silence, nor before one has asked what disease he has. The Babylonians bury their dead in honey, and their forms of lamentation are similar to those used in Egypt. Whenever a Babylonian man has intercourse with his wife, he sits by incense that has been offered, and his wife does the same on the other side. In the morning both of them wash themselves, for they will touch no vessel until they have washed. The Arabians also do the same in this matter. The most shameful of the customs of the Babylonians is as follows. Every woman of the country must once in her life sit down in the precinct of Aphrodite and have intercourse with a man who is a stranger. Many women, because they have become arrogant through wealth and do not think it proper to mingle with the rest, drive to the temple with pairs of horses and covered carriages, take their place there, and are followed by a large number of attendants. The greater number do this. In the sacred enclosure of Aphrodite, great numbers of women sit with a wreath of cord around their heads. Some come and others go. Straight passages run between the women in every direction, and through these the strangers pass and make their choice. Once a woman has taken her seat there, she does not depart again to her house until one of the strangers has thrown a silver coin into her lap and had intercourse with her outside the temple. When he throws the coin, he must say only these words: "I demand you in the name of the goddess Mylitta." Mylitta is the name given by the Assyrians to Aphrodite. The silver coin may be of any value. Whatever it is, the woman will not refuse it, for she is not allowed to do so, since this coin is made sacred by the act. She follows the man who first throws it and rejects no one. Afterward she departs to her house, having fulfilled her duty to the goddess, and from then on no gift, however great, will be able to win her. Therefore all those who have beauty and stature are quickly released, but those who are unshapely remain there for a long time, unable to fulfill the law. Some remain as much as 3 or 4 years. In some parts of Cyprus too, there is a custom similar to this. These customs then are established among the Babylonians. There are also 3 tribes among them that eat nothing but fish. When they have caught the fish and dried them in the sun, they do this: they throw them into brine, pound them with pestles and strain them through muslin. They eat them either kneaded into a soft cake or baked like bread, according to their liking. When this nation too had been subdued by Cyrus, he desired to bring the Massagetae under his rule. This nation is reputed to be both great and warlike, dwelling toward the east and the rising sun, beyond the river Araxes and opposite the Macedonians. Some also say that this nation is of Scythian race. The Araxes is said by some to be larger than the Ister and by others smaller. They say that there are many islands in it, about equal in size to Lesbos, and that people live on them who in summer feed on roots of every kind that they dig up, and store for winter certain fruits from trees which they have discovered for food when these fruits are ripe. They say also that other trees have been discovered by them that bear fruit of such a kind that when they gather in companies in one place and light a fire, they sit around in a circle and throw some of it into the fire. They smell the fruit as it burns and are intoxicated by the scent, as the Hellenes are by wine. When more of the fruit is thrown on, they become more intoxicated, until at last they rise up to dance and begin to sing. This is said to be their manner of life. As for the river Araxes, it flows from the land of the Macedonians, from which also flows the Gins that Cyrus divided into 360 channels. It empties itself through 40 branches, all of which except one end in swamps and shallow pools. Among these, they say, live men who feed on fish eaten raw and are accustomed to use seals, Gins as clothing. The one remaining branch of the Araxes flows with an unhindered course into the Caspian Sea. The Caspian Sea is separate by itself and has no connection with the other sea. For all the sea that the Hellenes navigate, and the sea beyond the Pillars, which is called Atlantis, and the Erythraean Sea, are in fact all one, but the Caspian is separate and lies apart by itself. In length, it is a voyage of 15 days if one uses oars, and in breadth, where it is broadest, a voyage of 8 days. On the western side of the sea the Caucasus runs along it, the greatest in extent, and the loftiest of all mountain ranges. Many different races of men live in the Caucasus, living for the most part on the wild produce of the forests. Among them there are said to be trees that produce leaves of such a kind that by pounding them and mixing them with water they paint figures on their garments. The figures do not wash out, but grow old with the woolen cloth as if they had been woven into it at the beginning. Men say that these people have intercourse openly, like cattle. On the west of the sea called Caspian then, the Caucasus is the boundary, while toward the east, and the rising sun there follows a plain whose extent is limitless to the eye. Of this great plain the Massagetae occupy a large part, and Cyrus had become eager to march against them. Many strong reasons urged him on and incited him to it. First, the manner of his birth, that is, the belief held about him that he was more than a mere mortal man, and next the success he had met with in his wars, for wherever Cyrus directed his march, it was impossible for that nation to escape. The ruler of the Massagetae was a woman, queen after the death of her husband, and her name was Tomyris. Cyrus sent to her and courted her, pretending that he wished to have her as his wife. The Tomyris understood that he was courting not herself but the kingdom of the Massagetae, and rejected his advances. After this, since he made no progress by craft, Cyrus marched to the Araxes and began an open expedition against the Massagetae, forming bridges of boats across the river for his army to pass over, and building towers upon the vessels that gave them passage across. O King of the Medes, cease pressing forward the work that you are now pressing forward. You cannot tell whether these things will in the end be to your advantage or not. Cease to do this, I say, and be king over your own people, and endure to see us ruling those whom we rule. Since, however, I know that you will not be willing to receive this counsel, but choose anything rather than to be at rest, therefore, if you are greatly anxious to test the Massagetae in fight, come now. Leave the labor you have in yoking together the banks of the river, and cross into our land when we have first withdrawn 3 days' journey from the river. Or if you would rather receive us into your land, do this same thing yourself. When Cyrus heard this, he called together the leading men among the Persians. After gathering them, he laid the matter before them for discussion, asking their advice as to which of the 2 things he should do. Their opinions all agreed in one, urging him to receive Tomyris and her army into his own country. But Croesus the Lydian, who was present and found fault with this opinion, declared an opinion opposite to the one that had been set forth. O king, I told you in former times also that since Zeus had given me over to you, I would, according to my power, avert whatever occasion of falling I might see coming near your house. Now my sufferings, which have been bitter, have proved lessons of wisdom to me. If you suppose that you are immortal, and that you command an army that is also immortal, it will be of no use for me to declare my judgment to you. But if you have perceived that you yourself are a mortal man, and that you command others who are likewise mortal, then learn this first. For the affairs of men there is a revolving wheel, and in its revolution it does not allow the same people always to have good fortune. Therefore I now have an opinion about the matter before us that is opposite to that of these men. If we consent to receive the enemy into our land, there is this danger for you in doing so. If you are defeated, you will lose your whole realm besides, for it is clear that if the Massagetae are victorious, they will not turn back and flee, but will march upon the provinces of your realm. On the other hand, if you are victorious, your victory will not be so complete as it would be if you crossed into their land, overcame the Massagetae, and pursued them when they fled. For against what I said before, I will set the same again here, and say that when you have conquered, you will march straight against the realm of Tomyris. Besides what has been said, it is a disgrace and not to be endured that Cyrus son of Cambyses should yield to a woman and so withdraw from her land. Now therefore it seems good to me that we should cross over and advance from the crossing as far as they go in their retreat, and try to get the better of them by doing as follows. The Massagetae, as I am informed, have no experience of Persian good things and have never enjoyed any great luxuries. Therefore cut up cattle without stint, prepare the meat, and set out a banquet for these men in our camp. Provide also without stint bowls of unmixed wine and provisions of every kind. When this has been done, leave behind the most worthless part of your army, and let the rest begin to retreat from the camp toward the river. If I am not mistaken in my judgment, when they see a quantity of good things, they will fall to the feast. After that, it remains for us to display great deeds. These were the conflicting opinions. Cyrus let go the former opinion, and chose that of Croesus. He gave notice to Tomyris to retire, since he intended to cross over to her. She proceeded to retire as she had promised at the beginning. Cyrus delivered Croesus into the hands of his son Cambyses, to whom he meant to give the kingdom, and earnestly charged Cambyses to honor Croesus and treat him well if the crossing against the Massagetae should not prosper. After giving this charge and sending them away to the land of the Persians, Cyrus crossed the river with his army. When he had passed over the Araxes and night came on, he saw a vision in his sleep in the land of the Massagetae. In his sleep it seemed to Cyrus that he saw the eldest son of Histastes with wings on his shoulders, and with one of these wings he overshadowed Asia, and with the other Europe. Now the eldest son of Histastes, son of Arsames, a man of the Achaemenid clan, was Darius. At that time Darius was, I suppose, a youth of about 20 years of age, and he had been left behind in the land of the Persians, for he was not yet of full age to go out to war. When Cyrus awoke he considered the vision with himself. Since the vision seemed to him to be of great importance, he called Histastes, took him aside by himself, and spoke to him. Histastes, your son has been found plotting against me and against my throne. I will tell you how I know this for certain. The gods have care for me and show me beforehand all the evils that threaten me. In the night just past, while sleeping, I saw the eldest of your sons with wings on his shoulders, and with one of these wings he overshadowed Asia, and with the other Europe. Judging from this vision, it cannot be otherwise than that he is plotting against me. Therefore go by the quickest road back to Persia, and make sure that when I return there after subduing these regions, you set your son before me to be examined. Cyrus said this because he supposed that Darius was plotting against him. In fact, the divine powers were showing him beforehand that he was destined to meet his end there, and that his kingdom was about to pass to Darius. O king, heaven forbid that there should be any man of Persian race who would plot against you. If there is any, I pray that he perish as quickly as possible, since you made the Persians free instead of slaves, and made them rule all nations instead of being ruled by others. If any vision announces to you that my son is planning rebellion against you, I deliver him over to you, to do with him whatever you wish. After answering with these words, Histastes crossed back over the Araxes, and went his way to the Persian land to keep watch over his son Darius for Cyrus. Meanwhile Cyrus went forward and made a march of one day from the Araxes according to the suggestion of Croesus. After this, when Cyrus and the best part of the Persian army had marched back toward the Araxes, and those unfit for fighting had been left behind, a third part of the army of the Massagetae, I came to attack and proceeded to kill those left behind from the army of Cyrus, though not without resistance. Seeing the feast that had been set out, after overcoming their enemies they lay down and feasted. Satiated with food and wine, they went to sleep. Then the Persians came upon them, killed many, and took alive even more than they killed. Among those captured was the son of Queen Tomyris, who was leading the army of the Massagetae. His name was Spargipizes. When Tomyris heard what had happened to the army and what concerned her son, she sent a herald to Cyrus with this message. Cyrus, insatiable for blood, do not be elated with pride by what has happened, because with that fruit of the vine, with which you fill yourselves and become so mad that as the wine descends into your bodies evil words float up upon its stream, because I say by setting a snare with such a drug as this, you overcame my son, and not by valor in fight. Now therefore receive the word I utter, giving you good advice. Restore my son to me and depart from this land without penalty, triumphant over a third part of the army of the Massagetae. But if you do not do so, I swear to you by the Sun, who is lord of the Massagetae, that surely I will give you your fill of blood, insatiable as you are. When these words were reported to Cyrus, he paid no attention to them. Spargipizes, the son of Queen Tomyris, when the wine left him and he learned what evil condition he was in, begged Cyrus to release him from his chains. He obtained his request, and as soon as he was released and had power over his hands, he killed himself. So Spargipizes ended his life in this way. Tomyris, since Cyrus would not listen to her, gathered together all her power and joined battle with Cyrus. Of all the battles fought by barbarians, I judge this to have been the fiercest, and I am informed that it happened in this way. First, they stood apart and shot at one another. Afterward, when their arrows were all shot away, they fell upon one another and fought at close quarters with spears and daggers. They continued fighting one another for a long time, and neither side would flee. But at last the Massagetae got the better in the fight. The greater part of the Persian army was destroyed there on the spot, and Cyrus himself ended his life there, after reigning in all for 29 years. Then Tomyris filled a skin with human blood, and had search made among the Persian dead for the corpse of Cyrus. When she found it, she lowered his head into the skin, and while doing outrage to the corpse, she spoke these words: "Though I still live and have overcome you in battle, nevertheless you ruined me by taking my son with craft. But I, according to my threat, will give you your fill of blood." As regards the end of Cyrus' life, many tales are told, but this one which I have related is, to my mind, the most worthy of belief. As for the Massagetae, they wear clothing similar to that of the Scythians, and their manner of life is also like theirs. Some of them are horsemen and some do not ride horses, for they have both ways of fighting. They have both archers and spearmen, and their custom is to carry battle axes. For everything they use either gold or bronze. In all that has to do with spear, points, arrowheads, and battle axes they use bronze, but for headdresses, girdles, and belts around the armpits they use gold as ornament. In the same way with their horses, they put bronze breastplates around their chests, but on the bridles, bits, and cheek pieces they use gold. Iron and silver, however, they do not use at all, for they do not have them in their land, but they have gold and bronze in abundance. These are the customs they have. Each man marries a wife, but they have their wives in common. What the Hellenes say the Scythians do is not in fact done by the Scythians, but by the Massagetae. Whatever woman a man of the Massagetae desires, he hangs up his quiver in front of the wagon and has intercourse with her freely. They have no precise limit of age set for life, but when a man becomes very old, his nearest kin come together and solemnly slaughter him, along with cattle. After that they boil the flesh and feast upon it. This is considered by them the happiest lot. But a man who ends his life by disease they do not eat. Instead they cover him in the earth, counting it a misfortune that he did not attain to being slaughtered. They sow no crops, but live on cattle and on fish, which they get in abundance from the river Araxes. Moreover, they are drinkers of milk. Of the gods they worship the sun alone, and to him they sacrifice horses. The rule of the sacrifice is this: to the swiftest of the gods they assign the swiftest of all mortal things.
And the book 1 ends: the conqueror of Croesus and Babylon brought down at last by a woman of the Massagetae, his head, if Herodotus is to be believed, dropped into a skin filled with blood so he might at last drink his fill of it. If true, Cyrus is dead, his son Cambyses inherits the empire and his father's ambition without his father's luck, and Cambyses and Egypt are where we shall go in book 2. Thank you for sitting with the whole of Clio. Mind the footnotes and beware the folly.